Kia ora and welcome to part 2 of our mixdown. You'll remember if you've just watched part 1, just as a recap, we talked about using the Pro limiter to measure our overall LUFS, and then we started mixing the dialogue to get it to around 23 or just above 23 LUFS, and we applied a little bit of basic compression, essentially in the form of a limiter, just to control the louder parts of the dialogue and glue it all together in a sense. We also approached the music, added that in, but we have not yet added in the effects. Let's have a look at our music tracks. So we went through, again, added a little bit of compression to control. We added another compressor on the output just to glue all the parts together. A little bit of EQ just to remove some of the lower end to set the music in place, and I believe we copied the same compression that we used on the intro into the aftermath music. So very basic start, a little bit of level balancing. So now it's time to add in the effects, and essentially what I want to do is, while keeping an eye on the overall integrated LUFS as the effects come in, also think about how it sounds good. One of the things we want to be really careful about is that when we're mixing, the main goal is to make it sound good and not to get too tied up into this overall level. By doing what we did in the first video, we sort of set it up so if we balance everything around that vocal, it should be in the ballpark, so we can almost forget about this, but it does pay to keep an eye on it. Like I said in the other video, mixing for music, I don't usually pay that much attention to the LUFS. I watch my master fader, that my overall mix has got plenty of headroom, and the main goal is that it sounds good, that all the parts work together, all the frequencies work together, all of the dynamic control works together. Quite a lot of that comes from experience, just from doing it a lot. As you're starting out, get your level right. So think about your level and your panning. That's your first point, because from there, everything else can just be added on as you grow, as you're mixing. So let's get into that now. So I'm going to unmute my effects channel, expand that out, and essentially I'm just going to run it through and have a listen, get my impressions, and I might make some notes as I go through about things that need to be changed with my mix so far. Okay, so we can see I'm at a minus 19 LUFS, so a little bit loud. I need to bring my master fader down by 4 dB. Chances are I'm going to be doing a few things to change that level anyway. So I'm just going to get rid of the screen for now. So the first notes I made is the music's too loud. So I'm just going to bring down my overall music by about 6 dB. Now that's going to affect my LUFS value, which is probably going to work in the right direction. But I just felt the music overall was burying some of the effects, and it really should be much more background. It's diegetic music. It should just be there to fill in the silence, not the small sounds. So I've got my music in there. I'm not really using it. I mean, there's a little bit of emotional manipulation with the music, but for the most part it's fine. So I'm at a level with the music now where I just want to adjust my fader as I go, and towards the end maybe I'll automate it to be, you know, a little bit up in places and a little bit down, but not major changes. I think the dialogue suits all right. It sits there pretty well. I'm going to do things like automate the zombie bomber because they're moving closer and further away as they run around, and obviously panning as well where they're coming from. I won't do all this in the video because it'll take forever, but I will jump in and show you an example of doing something, and then I'll either speed up or just skip the repeats altogether so that we can get to the main bits. So I've got my effects layers here, I've got all my guns, and then I've got this big group here. I've got June's cloth pass. So here's a tip if you can't read what's going on with these, because sometimes your titles end up being a bit long. There is the track list here, and you can expand that out. So there, now I can read fairly easily what each track is. Notice how it updates, so it abbreviates things. So I can turn that on or off with this arrow here if I want more screen real estate, but I'm actually pretty happy. Sometimes what I'll do is in the mix window, I will leave it on, and on the edit window I'll leave it off. Yeah, just depending on what I'm doing. So you can set that up. It's customizable, obviously. I am going to make a group, so I've got my zombie horde here. I could do some further grouping. I don't necessarily need to do level control. Blood splatter, wet zombie burst. There's my explosions. I've got a riser in there. The melee hammer stuff's all together. Body drop, wet and dry. So what I was doing there is just going through and changing things around, and then I can put these into basic folders. I'm not going to bother routing these and doing extra processing. This is just a way for me to hide them away. Of course I can double click on here and make sure that they stay the same color, and it just gives me the ability to hide them away, concentrate on them. So there we go, I've got my machine rotation. That's cloth pass, that can stay out. I'm tempted to leave those. Electrical cable, the shark, blood splatter, wet zombies. The only thing I really gain from it is the ability to solo or mute, and that's quite useful. So I'm going to make this, and actually everything a clip group. So I'm going to go Command G, which if you can get into the track menu, group, Command G. I'm going to create a group for that. I'm just calling it other sounds, and this is really just the ability for me to mute everything at once that's not guns or zombie sounds or melee or feet or Atmos. So the next thing I want to bring in there is I want to work on the Atmos. So I'm actually going to mute all of this, everything except the Atmos. So let's have a listen through it, and I want to set my Atmos level. So we've got 3 layers of Atmos in this particular one. I've got the harbour sounds, so let's have a listen to that. You can see I've already processed the Atmoses. So it's a bit of a quiet lapping of water. I might just raise that up a little bit. I've EQ'd it, and that's probably because it would have had some traffic in the background. Might even go a little higher with that, just because I know that I've got another Atmos sound that's going to be covering some of that. I might just bring up the gentle lapping of waves a little bit. And here we've got the wind Atmos, and if I jump across to that, I've done basically the same thing, enhancing the high end, bringing down the low. Again, there's a rumble, so I'm tempted to actually put a high pass filter in, just so that when it mixes with the harbour sound, the rumble doesn't get in the way of the lower frequency content of the water. And I've done quite a bit of work on this Atmos because it's the sound design. So this is the Hell Tower. Now if I go, let's have a look at that. There's the Hell Tower. It was just sitting in the background. That sort of hand that's raised up in the middle of the harbour with a big fire on top of it. So let's hear that sound in there. So this is the sound of the Hell Tower hanging around. I can see that I've done a little bit of panning automation to keep it in sight. It looks like I need to fix that though. Some of it's a bit wrong. So let's have a look at what I did there. Obviously I started off with a basic sound. I think it was a bunch of different sounds stretched and changed from memory, but I think there's a whole video about the creation of it. Now that I listen to it in context, I'm thinking, okay, I've compressed it quite a lot. Might just uncompress it a bit. I've taken out this sort of angle, but actually, now that I listen to it, it's not bad. I want to just turn down that sort of sound. If I pull that down and maybe bring up the higher frequencies. The higher frequencies make it sound a little electrical. I think the fire sounds sort of crackling that I want is here. I'm interested in that roar of the fire. Maybe a little less of the So I'm just putting my Atmos in there a little bit. I remember I brought my music down. I could actually bring it down a little bit more. In terms of Atmos, kind of got what I want. Cool. So let's add in the feet. The feet, for the most part, are going to be mostly June's footsteps. I think there are some footsteps, some scuff, so this is actually June and footsteps extra. I think these two are particularly June sounds. This one is just some sort of extra bits and pieces, maybe for June as well. We've got zombies in the water, and then these two I actually don't think I ended up recording, so I'm going to hide them and make them inactive. So initially my idea was, as I was queuing, everything should have sounds for it, but I think with all of the action and background that's going on and the zombies distance from the camera, for the most part, I'm not going to bother using the feet. So this is the sort of decision you make when you're mixing. So here we go. Here's the feet sounds. Notice I've EQ'd this already. I've got a high pass filter just to take any rumble off, and I've got a resonant notch. So I'm going to take this resonant notch, and I should have done it on 1 EQ actually. So what have I got here? High pass 12 dB per octave, 185. Add in a high pass filter, 12 dB per octave, 185.1. So there we go. Now I've got it all on 1 EQ. I must have done them at separate times. So let's have a listen to that resonance. Yes. If I shift click, it swaps the gain control around from cut to boost. So I'm going to go boost. Hear that metallic dunk, 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 dunk. Sounds like the resonant frequency of a mic stand. So I probably had a mic stand too close to the paving stones that I was running on. So just by taking that metallic ring out, sounds better. And there's some extra scuff sounds that I've added in for fun. Does it sound to me like I need a little bit more high frequency detail? And I'm just going to do the same on this, which would have been recorded at the same time. Or listen to it in context. Great. Once the action music comes in, the rest of the sounds become a little bit superfluous. Now I do have some zombies in the water. So let's have a look at that. Zombies in the water. Here they are. Right, I'm not really noticing that, so I'm just going to go in, maybe add a little bit more gain. So there's my source file, so obviously it was quite quiet. Bring that down in the mix so it's easy for me to adjust later. So that action is actually happening off screen over to the side here. So there's my zombies in the water. So it's actually something that I should automate as it comes across. So it starts off, actually, from June's perspective, they're happening just over here on the side of the screen. And then as I move, so I'm going to go into write mode, or latch mode for now. If you want to know more about touch, latch and write, there's an automation video on Moodle. So I'm just going to automate this pan now. And if I go to read, now if I want to make that a little bit more refined, I can go into my pan automation. So here it is here. At this point, where are they? So as we start in with a bit of water, they should be in the center-ish, maybe a little bit to the right, which they are. Then here they get to the center, so here they're in the center. So this is where I could get this breakpoint up. You can hold command to add another breakpoint if you need to. So they're in the center here, and then they start to move off to the left. So these breakpoints are a little bit slow. If I option click them, I can delete them individually, or I can select and delete, and then I'll get a smooth. And here they're probably fine. I don't need all those extra breakpoints. Those are those little slight movements I made, and they're pretty much staying there all the way to the end. The sounds actually stop. Yeah. Anyway, there's a little bit of automation. Here's some more footsteps in the water. Just going to bring them up. Right, so here they are here. Now if we look at the positioning, they start right in the center of the screen, so that's fine. That can stay center. And then they pretty much stay in the center of the screen, actually, from the perspective of what's going on. Now that healing R, straight away I noticed that's a little bit loud. Oh, one thing you can do is I can ungroup. So I'm going to show you in the menu. If I go up to the clip menu and ungroup, it changes that clip group, and then I can bring down my member of that group, and then there's another command called regroup, and that will put the group back together with the changes. Just to remember, what I did with that clip group is I added 3 dB across the board, but that R was obviously too loud when I added that in already. The next,
shoot the explosives!
Shoot the explosives, that could be a little louder. So again, I'll ungroup. So Option Command U, some of you might have seen the key commands. Option Command G to group, Option Command U to ungroup, Option Command R to regroup. So I'm going to ungroup, get to my shoot the explosives. Notice I've named my dialogue lines. Paid off just then, didn't it? Just adding 3 dB to shoot the explosives, and then I'm going to go Option Command R to regroup.
Shoot the explosives!
Cool. I can actually hear it started to hit the compressor a little bit too hard there. I can hear it sort of distorting a bit. So let's go to June's compressor. Must be the bus compressor, it's hitting too hard. So I'm just going to raise my threshold up a little bit.
Shoot the explosives!
Yeah, so it's peaking at -12. It was probably hitting a little bit hard there.
Shoot the explosives!
It's better, it sounds more natural, and it's a little bit closer. Now I can do a final automation pass as I go through, but I won't do that yet because I'm not entirely sure that my global volume level or my baseline volume level is where I want it. So where are we at now? I was doing footsteps, wasn't it? Let's have a bit of a watch. Cool, those footsteps are working. Let's add in the zombie sounds. Oh, I've still got that group active. So let's just go back and ungroup that. Other sounds. Right, let's have the guns. Shotgun could be a little more powerful. While I'm here, I'm just going to add the shark sounds in, so the shark splashing and there's a noise. So let's just go here. It's not bad. The second splash just goes kodonk. So I'm thinking, I quite like the sound of that splash. So I might just copy it and paste it down over the kadunk and just have it as a bit of a layer. Okay, and my human pattern recognition brain is telling me that's the same, so I'll use an old gaming trick. Go up and let's just pitch shift it by a couple. Let's just see if that changes it. change the volume as well. Okay, it just happens a little bit too quick. It's not quite working like this. I think it does need to be a layer. So I'm just going to duplicate that track without the existing playlists, move this clip onto it and have it sort of layered underneath. More believable. Just going to drop it down. Good. So now I've got my shark splashing, and I've added an extra track. Shark splashing layer, just in case somebody needs to know later on. Now the shark roar, I think the splashing overall is a little bit loud, so I'm just going to go into my shark splash here. It's a little bit loud. My kind of weird pig sounds, I think, could sound a little bit more undead shark, so I'm just going to try pitching it down. So just I've added a pitch shifter, a little bit of feedback, so it makes it a bit more resonant. And I've applied a low pass filter just to take off some of the very top end. So let's have a listen to it before and after. So not changing it too much, but just making it sound less pig-like, and I think it was probably a pig sample. But it needs to be a bit louder. I'm going to put the pitch shift up here, and one of the things you can do because a pitch shifter in real time is quite a heavy process, I'm going to freeze it. So you can freeze up to this insert, and it basically just bounces a file in the background that it accesses from there and turns your plugin off. Now I've got a bit of headroom, so I can just go in. Maybe I'll go into the dynamic section, bit of a compressor, and fast attack, soft knee, maybe 4:1 ratio, just to sort of give it a bit of grunt. Set my threshold so it's hitting most of it, and then give myself a little bit of a boost, so essentially turning up the quiet sections. Now that sits in the mix a little better, so just using that idea of smoothing compression, so my threshold touching on the louder parts, and all the bits that are underneath are being turned up by 3 decibels. So we're getting an overall impression of a more consistent shark noise. It pretty much stays in the center of the screen, so I'm okay with it. What's happening on June's clothes? Okay, so that's obviously emulating her trousers. I'll just run an EQ on there, probably do a high pass filter, and let's just hear how it goes in the mix. Probably needs to be louder. So I'm going to say that the source files, and obviously you'll probably find the same thing with close, tiny signal. So a little bit of clip gain. In fact, how many close? Oh, okay, so there's quite a lot of cloth pass. So instead of doing that, I might just make a whole group, just like I did in the other, and bring the close up. I've got plenty of headroom, so I'm no danger of clipping. I'm probably bringing up noise floor, but hopefully in the whole mix that'll be fine. And then I can bring the fader down if I'm worried about it being too loud. And that, in conjunction with the sound of June's boots on the concrete, adds in quite a good dimension to the movement of the character. I actually feel like the splashes are too quiet. Shark itself is a little bit quiet too. Good. Here's my electrical cable. What's that sounding like? Okay, I'm just going to group the section, their electrical cable, and it's got some lower frequencies that I'm not in love with. That sounds a little bit more. There's a little bit of 50 hertz in there that I'm losing in my high pass filter. So I'm actually going to turn that off and bring up that 50 to 100 hertz harmonic. It's a bit lost in the background of everything, but still, it's an interesting aspect. I think the guns overall are a little bit light sounding, so I'm just going to add again that sort of idea of a pitch shifter, very common in sound design. Let's just throw a pitch shift in there, and these other tools I would use actually. Let's try it down a little bit. Cool, so I'm just adding in that extra little bit of pitch shift on the group. That means the shotgun should be a little bit more bumpy as well. Notice I mixed it 50-50. Let's have a listen to that gunshot again without it. Okay, and then just gives it that little lower dimension, actually removes some of the high frequency attack. Might not be the right tool for the job, so I'll come back to that, but for now that'll do. So let's just throw in the rest of the sounds now. Zombie sounds, sound of the melee section, the sniper. Actually, there's definitely something in the sniper I want to do, but we'll get to that. Now I did some prep on the explosions, so let's go to some explosions. There we go, explosion 1 and 2. So here's an explosion.
Light it down.
Not so sure you've got enough to destroy the tower. Find another generator.
Noticing a theme, so what I might do is just go through with an audio suite pitch shift. Let's use time shift this time, just for a bit of variety. And I'm going to transpose this one by 2 semitones. We'll maybe go... Render 2 semitones down. This might be an opportunity to do a time compress expand. So if I make it a little bit quicker.
Down.
So if I shorten it.
Suicide it down.
Maybe I'll extend this one, make it a little longer. Oh, this one actually might sound alright.
Not so sure you've got enough.
I'll just try it. Gotta be careful with extension because it can sound...
Not so sure you've got enough to...
It sounds artifacty. So let's just go.
Suicide it down.
Not so sure you've got enough to destroy the tower. You'll need it. Find another generator.
That's good. Here's our friend again, so I'm going to slow that down. I'll speed that up a bit, because I think that's the most successful. And let's try a little bit of a lower. Cool. And this one, let's just go up a tiny bit and make it a little bit slower. I think that's just a leftover bit from an edit. Now when I go through with my explosions, now what I did with my explosions here, probably in a previous video, or maybe I just did it and haven't shown it, is I've got the explosion itself, which is the sort of attack. And then underneath I've got a filtered low frequency version of it, which I can just add in just to give it a bit of bottom end. So this is the bottom end of my explosion. And that's...
Suicide it down.
Ideally I'd use different explosion samples.
Suicide down!
But to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Suicide down!
But to ensure you've got enough to destroy the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Okay, now that zombie there, who was pretty happily giving me the beat down, needs to be louder. So where is the extra zombie for that?
Generator.
I'm going to ungroup. It's my laughing zombie, and I kind of want that part to be a little louder, so I'm going to bring it up. Let's see what it's like in. Okay, a little bit too much. It's hamming it up. It's a very happy zombie because he's just hit me with the bone it's carrying. Very good, so now I can regroup, and that's put all the groups back together, but left that adjusted file.
At least one more charge. Find another generator.
So let's watch it through from the top. So just two more things I want to show you. Actually, there might be three things. We'll just see. I did notice in the shotgun load section, which happens here,
At least one more charge. Find
just sounds a little bit light. And it's particularly in the mix.
more charge. More charge.
And I think it's just the prevalence of the high frequency in it. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to use a compressor to start with, because another use for a compressor, apart from controlling the dynamics of a performance, you can control the dynamics of a sound. So when I listen to that load sound, I'm hearing the high frequency being quite loud and poking up much more above the lower frequencies in that sound. So by compressing the sound, I can make the high frequencies and the lower frequencies more squashed together, and this can increase the body. So this is why sometimes people talk about compression as being a tool that makes things sound thicker, gluing things together. That's the sort of reasoning behind it, is it's squashing the frequency response to make them more even. I've got my threshold set so that I'm every time it's hitting it. Let's have a listen. And I want to attack straight away because I want to get that transient. I actually want a fast release, so which makes it harder for me to see the meter. And then I'm going to bring up this level. So if you listen now, without the compressor on, it sounds lighter. So that's bringing the frequencies closer together. Now I'm also going to use an EQ, obviously, because there are aspects of that sound, especially the high frequency, that I'm not in love with. So let's have a listen for that. In fact, I'm going to use a shelf. So that's what I'm after in there. More charge. And I'll carry on from that.
One more charge. Find another generator. You'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
So it's good to capture the detail when you're recording, but sometimes you want to shape it in the mix. So that's one aspect. So that's using compression for thickening of the sound and also making some frequency decisions. You also saw me in there sweeping through, looking for the sound, so I could hear the sound that I wanted to get rid of, and I just used the boost to sweep through to get exactly the sound, so exactly the frequency range that I wanted to change. So that's a very useful thing that you can do essentially over and over. So that was one of the things. The other thing I wanted to talk about was my squeaky machine as an example of using, so there's the machine rotating, the squeaking rotating machine. This thing over here. So if I go through from the top, it's not moving a lot of the time. And then I shoot it. Right, from there, if I go through, it's dead center. So let's bring down my automation lane and go into pan. And it's dead center. But then, by the time it gets to here, it's off to the right. Command click. In fact, let's make a selection. Okay, it moves in this section. Well, June moves. So in terms of perspective, at this point, it's off to the right. It's actually off camera. So I'm going to go further than 50%. And then it just pops back in. And don't be afraid to use your nudge command. All right, there we go. It's starting to creep back in by there. I'm going to put a breakpoint and say you can go about there. And then I'll nudge to the next frame, and it's definitely in frame. In fact, let's just move that there, and it's just off center. It actually goes back off center here. So it's on center. It's on center, and as I move through center to the left, getting more to the right, more so to the right, stays there on the right. In fact, if anything goes a little bit further, it peaks off screen, but then it's back. And where does it come back to the center? Well, at least it's on screen there. Center, and then from about there, it's starting to move to the left. And let's find out. So it goes to the left and it stays, gets full left all the way over here for ages actually, and it might stop squeaking before it. So we're here, it's just starting to go to the left about here. I'm going to put it back to the center just to start for the next time. It goes off camera here. So I'm just going to go a little past it, bring that down full to the left. Now it goes behind, but we're not doing Dolby Atmos, so we're going to leave it. Oh, and actually I'm going to the right, not the left, so let's just change that. Now we can see here, still behind us, but actually, if you think about it, it's not full, well, there's still hard left at this point, right? Add another breakpoint and carry on nudging. Right there, it's coming up closer to center. It's heading back towards the center here, and in fact it's in the center of our image again, about there. Let's say slightly left of center. Pretty much in the center of all that shot.
Suicide down!
In fact, that one, I'm going to put a volume layer in there. And this is something you can do. You can make a selection and just bring the whole thing down.
Disgusting! Suicide down!
Until sure you've got enough to...
Now you notice it stops. One thing I could do here is go Audio Suite Verify, which has a slow down tape machine algorithm. So if I go slow down render, so it's just running down. It's a very subtle thing. Something I'll know is there. Okay, so heads off to the right here. So I'm just...
From the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
Stays to the right, so about here. Starts off in the center, heads off to the right, and gets fully right there.
From the tower, you'll need at least one more charge.
I'm just going to add a little breakpoint in here and keep it in the center.
From the tower, you'll need at least one more charge. Find another generator.
And that was pretty good. Now it's goes hard right about. It's definitely in there by then. Heads back towards the center here. Not quite the center, but... So it's off to the right. So it's off camera here, but it's back on camera there, so I'm just going to pan it out that way. Almost goes a little left there. And that's it. Squeaky machine pass. I can hide my automation lanes, and when I play through that, all the squeaks are going to be in the right place. So that was just showing you a quick implementation of doing some panning and some volume automation once you're happy with the overall placement of everything. So hopefully there's some stuff in there that you can take away, some useful ideas, and obviously your mixes are all going to be different, and I really look forward to hearing the results. If you have any specific questions that you want a video made for, just send me a message. Alright, ka kite.